I transmigrated into the role of the villain's wicked stepmother, and the system demands I don't break character. I glared at the 5-year-old brat at my feet and viciously swapped the milk in his hand for bitter melon juice. From then on, he wasn't allowed to be picky about his food. Having a pet meant he had to clean up its mess. Later, when applying for university, I secretly changed his application choices. Years later, the antagonist achieved fame and success. I thought I was doomed. Unexpectedly, he stood before the media and said, "The person I'm most grateful to is my mother. Her love accompanied me as I grew up, and she pointed me in the right direction in life." Wait, is there something not quite right here? Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. After dying from illness, the system made me transmigrate into the villain's wicked stepmother to continue living. But the cost is that I can't break character. This is an urban male-oriented novel, where the currently 5-year-old Matthew will grow up to become the major villain who causes the male lead's family ruin and death. The biggest reason for his psychological distortion stems from me, his wicked stepmother. I pondered for a moment but couldn't recall any particularly wicked experiences. Simply put, it means not letting him live too comfortably. So I turned to look at the little munchkin sitting properly on the chair, quietly drinking his milk. I snatched the cup from him and handed it to the nanny. "Switch it to bitter melon juice for him. The more bitter, the better." The little guy froze for a moment. A white milk mustache still on his lips, glared at me angrily but didn't dare to speak. When I transmigrated, this body had already been married into the James family for over half a year, according to the original plot. After discovering that Leroy, the villain's father, rarely came home, I gradually dropped the gentle facade, started all kinds of torment and schemes against little Matthew. At first, he resisted too, but how could a child be a match for an adult? Every time he complained, I would double down on falsely accusing and twisting his words. After prolonged psychological abuse, he had become resentful but dared not speak out. Now, all I need to do is to carry on with this behavior. By the way, let me add a bit of my own flair. Matthew probably has never tasted bitter melon juice before. His little face scrunched up, and he instinctively stuck out his tongue. My heart melted at the adorable sight, but I still said coldly, "Drink it all." Eating bitter melon is nothing short of torture for children. How can this not be considered a form of abuse? I'm practically the epitome of a wicked stepmother. Couldn't be more successful at it. At this thought, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. After breakfast, the nanny was about to take Matthew to school. I frowned as I watched him change into a set of somewhat cheap, tattered clothes. "Why are you deliberately dressing like this? Didn't you say before that we shouldn't encourage vanity in children and that it's better to keep a low profile?" TSK. The original character's setting is truly wicked and sinister. To think she would try to undermine Matthew's self-esteem in this way, but she's made a miscalculation. What do kindergarten children know about wealth and poverty? At this age, what children fear most is actually exclusion and isolation. Thinking of this, I immediately had the nanny change Matthew into a little suit. We even tied a cute little bow tie for him. Then I had the driver bring out the most expensive and flashy car from the garage. Make sure he becomes the most special kid in the entire kindergarten. Resent the rich, everyone, resent the rich. Perhaps it's because my behavior is somewhat different from usual. As we were about to leave, little Matthew uneasily pursed his lips and asked softly, "Why are you doing this?" I crouched down and let out a sinister chuckle. "Because I'm bad." Little Matthew took a frightened step back, and I seized the moment to pounce forward. Planting a kiss on his chubby little cheek, he covered his face in horror. I seized the opportunity to threaten, "Say goodbye to mommy now, or I'll personally wait for you at the kindergarten when school lets out this afternoon." After half a year of interaction, he must really dislike me. Kissing him and making him call me mom was practically dancing on his last nerve. Yet he had no choice but to submit. Watching Matthew clench his mouth and dash out the door, I feel like I'm utterly wicked beyond measure. Matthew, after school started, I began wandering aimlessly around the villa with nothing to do. As mentioned in the original text, Leroy was busy working outside and often wouldn't come home for 10 days or even half a month. I was entirely the wife he married to take care of Matthew. He gives me $3 million in living expenses every month. He probably thought that the huge amount of living expenses would make this stepmother treat the child well, but he never expected it would instead spark greed in people. Thinking of this, I sighed slightly and asked the system, How long do I have to maintain this vicious persona? The system said, Matthew's stepmother has an important scene where she secretly changes his college application, forcing him to go abroad and encounter even darker events. So I'll have to maintain this persona at least until Matthew takes his college entrance exams. Roughly speaking, that's at least another 13 years, though admittedly, living the life of a wealthy housewife is a privilege in itself. But keeping up this villainous act every day is utterly exhausting. So I decided to go on a crazy shopping spree to comfort myself. As dusk was just beginning to fall, the driver pulled up right on time at the kindergarten gate. In the morning Matthew left without saying goodbye to me. I said I'd come to pick him up. And I meant it, firmly establish my authority, let him experience the terror of his stepmother. Gotta say, this private kindergarten is built like a little castle. Before long, the teacher appeared at the door leading a group of little kids. They wobbled their way to find their parents. I sat quietly in the car for a while first, planning to Matthew suddenly appear when he falls into the panic of being forgotten by his parents, giving him a scare, but unexpectedly, as soon as the teacher left, several children immediately surrounded Matthew, faintly. It seemed like they were saying something along the lines of Mom is coming to pick up and such. Matthew remained silent with his head lowered. Those kids started jumping around him, clapping their hands. Wait, how did this turn into playtime? As a proper wicked stepmother, I immediately stepped in to interrupt their happy moment. Hey, you little brats, why aren't you going home yet? Could it be that your parents don't want you anymore? No way, no way. I pulled the surrounded Matthew over and glared fiercely at these kids. Yes, that's right, I'm going to offend all his friends. Who are you? Are you the liar's sister? Being called sister made me feel a bit flustered, but I immediately retorted, what liar? Who's a liar? Didn't your teacher teach you to call people by their names? I am Matthew's mother. Our Matthew doesn't like you, and from now on, you're not allowed to play with him. Matthew's mother. His mother is the nanny. I've seen her, and she doesn't look like you. He even lied and said that wasn't his mother. He's just a vain liar, and we don't play with him anyway. What a complete mess. I am Matthew's mom. I angrily raised my fist, and the group of mischievous kids immediately ran away laughing. At this moment, Matthew, who had been standing behind me, tugged at my sleeve. His big eyes glistened with tears as he looked at me. Thank you for picking me up today. Something feels off here. Why is he thanking me? Perhaps my authority establishing tactic is working. Back at home, Matthew was unusually well behaved. Not only did he follow me around eagerly, but he also proactively helped me peel shrimp during the meal. He carefully placed the shrimp into my bowl. Seeing that I hadn't moved, he even emphasized, I washed my hands. I picked up my chopsticks. It was delicious, peeled quite well. Here's your reward. Peel a few more for me. Little Matthew pressed his lips together and lowered his head to start peeling shrimp with utmost concentration. In the end, I truly couldn't eat anymore, so the remaining shrimp finally went into his stomach. Eating too much for dinner means you have to do some exercise afterward. Considering my villainous persona, what better exercise could there be than tormenting a child? I walked into the room carrying 18 shopping bags. I waved at Matthew, who was playing with a Chinese ring puzzle. Come try on the clothes. Little Matthew usually has his clothes made to measure and delivered directly. He probably had never tried on clothes before and was quite excited at first. He even smiled, showing his little canine teeth, until later, he choked up and said, please, I can't try anymore, but there are still little bees, little penguins, little yellow ducks, and little monsters we haven't tried yet. Matthew fell silent. He stood there wearing a little green dinosaur costume, looking at me with teary eyes. Fine, the malicious plan continues. Just switch to a different project. When it was time to sleep, I decided to subject Matthew to one last torment for the day. I forced him to stay in the room and rest with me. After he changed into his pajamas, I handed him a storybook. Tell mommy a story and help her fall asleep. Matthew froze for a moment, as if he couldn't comprehend how such a shameless adult could exist, but still took the storybook. Once upon a time, there was a queen sitting by the open window, sewing for her daughter's ancient 10-thread work. Forgot the child was only 5 years old and couldn't read much, but this did give me an idea. Most children love to play and hate studying. A sudden inspiration struck me. A malicious plan slowly took shape in my mind. Beside me, Matthew was still stumbling through the storybook, probably aware that he didn't recognize many words, noticing my constant gaze. His little face turned bright red, and his voice grew quieter and quieter. I'll tell you tomorrow, okay? I let out a sinister chuckle, snatched the storybook, and said, lie down, now it's Mommy's turn to tell you a story. Today's story is called Snow White and Her 7 Stepmothers, an absolutely terrifying tale. In the end, Matthew might or might not have fallen asleep, I don't know, but I certainly put myself to sleep. In a daze, something soft seemed to brush against my cheek. A soft voice called out, Mommy. Early the next morning, while Matthew was at school, I began to implement my tiger parenting plan: Chinese, Olympiad, math, English, music, all scheduled, hire the best tutors, memorize the toughest books. I thought when Matthew came home from school and found out, he'd feel like the sky was falling. Turns out he adjusted just fine. He was particularly diligent in learning to read. A few days later, as I passed by the study, he poked his little head out and loudly recited, Once upon a time, there was a queen sitting by an open window, sewing for her daughter. After finishing, he looked at me with eager anticipation. To encourage him, I decided to reward him by letting him tell me a bedtime story every night. Half a month later, the wicked stepmother's plan still showed no new progress. Matthew drove back to his own room, then I hid under the covers, quietly flipping through the story of Cinderella, hoping to find some inspiration from it. Unexpectedly, I fell asleep before finishing 2 pages of the book. When I woke up again, the mattress swayed slightly, and a depression appeared at the edge of the bed. In the darkness, I couldn't see clearly and thought it was Matthew sneaking over. Instinctively, I reached out to pull the blanket over him, but my hand touched a firm, muscular chest instead. I froze for a second, then frantically turned on the desk lamp. A scream instantly tearing from my throat. Holy shit, dude, who the hell are you? The handsome guy in front of me looked somewhat like Matthew. Hearing this, he raised an eyebrow. If I remember correctly, it should be your husband, Leroy. Oh my god. I almost forgot about him. Well, not bad, at least you still remember my name. I sheepishly explained to my sugar daddy that I was just groggy from sleep. At that moment, rapid knocking came from outside the door. Before I could respond, the visitor urgently turned the doorknob. There stood Matthew holding his blankie, barefoot, at the doorway. Seeing Leroy, he dazedly called out, Dad. Then he walked up to me, placing his small hand on my head. What's wrong? Did you have a nightmare? I thought Leroy was nearby and couldn't reveal my stepmother's true nature. Gently comforted Matthew and urged him to go back to sleep. To my surprise, little Matthew nodded but then walked straight to the other side of the bed. Looking at his dad, he said with a slightly aggrieved tone, This is my spot. Me, Leroy said seriously, this is Dad's spot. Before Dad comes back, I always sleep here. That was just temporarily lent to you. Now it's time for you to go back to your own room to sleep. Matthew pursed his lips and fell silent, quietly handing me his security blanket, saying holding it would prevent nightmares. It seems Leroy is a typical strict father who raises his children without spoiling them. No wonder in the original text Matthew was abused by me for 8 years before he noticed. Watching Matthew about to leave, I panicked. I quickly picked him up and placed him in the middle of the bed. Good boy, sleep with Mom and Dad tonight. Matthew looked at me, then at his father, somewhat confused. I immediately cooed, Honey. Calling him honey was better than sharing a bed with a stranger. Leroy stiffened, grunted in response, then turned his back and lay down. I don't know why, but my ears turned bright red. Perhaps the company was gradually getting on the right track. This time, Leroy stayed at home for an unusually long time. At the dinner table, he asked Matthew how he had been doing lately. I looked at Matthew with a standard warning smile, glaring at him fiercely. Sure enough, he pursed his lips and said he had been particularly happy lately. A while ago, he had excessive internal heat and nosebleeds, so I specifically asked the nanny to prepare bitter melon juice for him every day. Sure enough, he recovered after just 2 days of drinking it. He also mentioned that I personally pick him up from school every day, buy him nice clothes, chase away the kids who bully him, and even hire tutors to help him catch up on his missed lessons. No one is as attentive as I am, not even my own mother. It almost moved me to tears. Kids really know how to spin a tale. Leroy seemed quite satisfied too, immediately transferring me 5 million, telling me to buy whatever I liked. I was so delighted I could hardly resist saluting on the spot and shouting thank you, boss, 3 times. In the following days, I wholeheartedly played the role of a doting mother, until Leroy left for abroad again to manage the branch company. I turned to look at Matthew, who was politely saying goodbye by the door, and let out a sinister chuckle. "Kid, your good days are over. As the wicked stepmother appointed by the system, I must always remember my original intention and never forget my mission." That very night, I put into practice on Matthew the inspiration I gained from Cinderella. I pointed at the used dishes and said, "You, go wash these." Matthew responded with an "oh," then obediently carried the small bowl to the sink. While washing, he asked me, "Like this, should I add this, is it clean now?" It felt a bit like playing house. With a sense of enjoyment in the process, I snorted, directing him while cruelly declaring, "From now on, not only must he wash his own dishes and utensils, but also his socks and underwear. All must be washed by himself. We must make sure he becomes the Cinderella of the new era." On the weekend, I hired a fitness coach to train Matthew in running. As for mental torment, I've really tried my best, so I could only think of ways to torment his body. Thus, Matthew was running himself ragged with the coach up front, while I strolled leisurely behind. On the second lap, a faint meow suddenly came from behind the bushes. I pushed through to look and saw a pure white kitten. It was covered in dirt and could barely walk steadily. At that moment, Matthew panted as he rushed over. "It's a kitten. Why is it alone here? Where's its mother? Maybe it went out for something." Matthew nodded without speaking, but remained distracted throughout the rest of the training, until the sky grew dark. It was time for us to go home. Matthew looked at the kitten still in the same spot. "Has its mother not come back yet?" Judging by the kitten's fur color, "It's probably been abandoned." I didn't say anything, but Matthew seemed to understand. He walked over, cradled the kitten in his arms, and looked at me with pleading eyes. "Let's keep it." To maintain the persona of a wicked stepmother, I should throw the kitten out of his arms right now, then scold him for dirtying his clothes. But those two pairs of round eyes staring at me at the same time really softened my heart. Just this once, that's what I was thinking. Then I went to the supermarket next door and asked for a cardboard box. On the way back, Matthew rarely took the initiative to hold my hand. His hand was small and could only grasp 3 of my fingers. I looked down and saw the usually expressionless child actually giving me a pleading smile. I thought he was expressing gratitude for the kitten incident, but as we entered, he whispered in my ear, "I'll be good, I'll be good, so don't abandon me like the kitten's mother did." My eyes grew hot, and my nose tingled with emotion, but a wicked stepmother must never show weakness. I nonchalantly pinched Matthew's little cheek and said fiercely, "From now on, you're in charge of scooping the litter, and I'll handle the petting." The kitten was named Snow White. Matthew said that although Snow White only has him as a stepmother, he would take good care of her. The next day, I saw Matthew consult the nanny, with his little bottom sticking out. He diligently fed the kitten and cleaned its litter. The days passed unhurriedly. Leroy occasionally comes back and brings gifts for me and Matthew. Apart from not seeing him for 10 days or half a month, he's actually a decent guy. I wonder if other wealthy wives feel empty because their husbands don't come home. Anyway, I'm absolutely loving this kind of life. That day, I was lying in the living room watching a dramatic short soap opera about wealthy families. Matthew suddenly ran up to me. "The kindergarten is hosting a parent-child sports day in 2 days. Can you go and participate?" I raised an eyebrow. Little Matthew immediately said, "I'll peel the pomelo for you and tell you a story tonight," as if afraid I might refuse. He bit his lip and added another offer, saying he'd be willing to keep accompanying me to try on clothes. I scratched my head. For a moment, I couldn't quite tell who was the actual child between us. Since I was bored at home with nothing to do, I agreed. Matthew let out a small cheer, watching his bouncing figure recede. I couldn't help but feel this child had become much livelier compared to our first meeting. On the day of the parent-child sports event, I made sure to wake up extra early. I tied up my hair and changed into casual clothes. The teacher paused for a moment when they saw me. "Are you Matthew's parent? The person who came last time didn't seem to be you." I was also taken aback and looked down at Matthew. He pursed his lips. "Last time it was the nanny who came." "I see. No wonder those brats said Matthew's mom was a nanny." Normally, which family would have a nanny attend their child's school activities? I awkwardly explained the situation to the teacher, left my contact information, and said they could reach out to me for anything regarding Matthew in the future. The opening ceremony of the sports day featured a group dance by the kindergartners. Every child has to go up and perform. Matthew stood in the front row, dancing while occasionally glancing at me. His little face turned as red as a tomato. I couldn't resist and started snapping away with my phone. At that moment, the system went online. Do you remember your character setting is the wicked stepmother? Stay true to the original aspiration. Keep the mission firmly in mind. Oh dear, I immediately defended myself. I'm keeping all these to humiliate Matthew later, just imagine. In broad daylight, at the peak of his success, when suddenly a big screen plays footage of him doing a butt-wiggling dance in kindergarten, wouldn't that count as a spectacular downfall? I could clearly sense the system was somewhat exasperated. Fortunately, it didn't press the matter further. After the opening ceremony came the parent-child relay race with randomly assigned teams. For Matthew, who had been training for a while, this was a piece of cake. Watching Matthew win by a landslide, a brat from the neighboring team provocatively said to Matthew, "The nanny your family brought this time is much younger and prettier than the last one. This is my mom." This was the first time Matthew acknowledged me in public. I feel inexplicably touched. TCH, what's so great about that? You didn't have a mom before, probably a stepmom. With a stepmom comes a stepdad. You're gonna have it rough from now on. Unwanted little orphan, neener. Matthew angrily argued with the other child. Not wanting to directly scold a child, I turned to the somewhat indifferent woman nearby and said, "Is this how you usually teach your child at home?" Our child wasn't wrong. Aren't you just a stepmother, so you're the biological mother then? Couldn't tell at all. Anyone would think you're deliberately letting the child be raised wrong. The woman was too angry to speak and was about to push me when the teacher timely intervened and led her away. I stayed with Matthew playing some other little games for a while longer, quickly forgot the earlier unpleasantness. But who would have thought that enemies are bound to meet? In the afternoon's parents-friendly match, I ran into that mother and son pair again. The woman had changed into sportswear, boasting that she would crush me. My physical condition is average, so I was giving it my all. Seeing the two of us locked in competition, the crowd around us erupted in cheers. I was just half a step ahead, about to break through to the finish line. Then, out of nowhere, some brat suddenly stuck out his foot and tripped me. I lost my balance and fell heavily to the ground, scraping a bloody gash on my arm. Oh, my mom is going to win. My mom is going to win. Matthew's mom is an idiot. The brat was jumping and cheering on the side. Little did they know, I instantly transformed into an excellent pipeline crawling competitor and managed to crawl to the finish line before their mom did. The kid and his mom were both dumbfounded. Oh, I win. Your mom is an idiot. The brat burst into tears with a wail and tried to kick me. Mom. Matthew rushed over from the audience seats with reddened eyes and shoved the brat to the ground in one swift motion. At this, the woman wouldn't have it. She raised her hand to slap Matthew across the face. I sat on the ground, unable to intervene in time. Fortunately, someone suddenly strode against the light from nearby, firmly gripping the woman's wrist. After bullying my wife, now you want to bully my child. Do you really think Leroy doesn't exist? Leroy, he actually came. The woman backed down, and even her husband, who came out of nowhere, started trying to smooth things over. Mr. Leroy, don't be angry. It's a competitive match after all. Injuries are inevitable. The child didn't know any better. Please don't take it to heart. How about this? We'll cover Mrs. James's medical expenses. Leroy walked over, scooped me up in his arms, and reached out with his other hand to hold Matthew's. In competitive sports, injuries are inevitable. Well, I hope you remember this. Sorry, I'm late. Leroy carried me back to the car. While helping me treat the wound, he kept apologizing. He said the company was busy. Matthew told him he could come in the afternoon, which eased his urgency. After speaking, he apologized to Matthew, who was blowing on my wound. I quickly said it was fine, understanding that the big boss has a lot on his plate. He sighed and said, Naomi, we're husband and wife, you can blame me. Well, if you knew I had $3 million in monthly living expenses, you'd probably agree I have nothing to complain about. Considering there's still an event later and my injury isn't serious, we returned to our spectator seats. Leroy specifically changed into sportswear, and I asked him a couple of questions. He patted Matthew's little head and casually said, I just signed up for a program, can't let my wife and child be bullied for nothing. Then, during the final Fathers basketball-friendly match, I saw Leroy dominating the court, especially Mr. Zhao, the father of the mischievous child. Every shot gets blocked, every catch gets tightly defended. Last time, I ended up getting Leroy's basketball smashed right in my face. Got hit so hard my nose started gushing blood. Leroy calmly dribbled the ball, in competitive sports, injuries are inevitable. Don't take it to heart, I'll cover your medical expenses, but if you insist on making an issue of it. My legal team and I are ready to handle it any time, Matthew shouted from the stage. Dad, you're so cool. Looking at Leroy, whose hair was slightly disheveled, I silently agreed in my heart. On the way back, Matthew, exhausted, fell asleep leaning against me. I looked at Leroy and said softly, I didn't expect you to play basketball. After spending so much time together, I even dared to joke with my sugar daddy. Leroy raised an eyebrow. What kind of person do you think I am? I wasn't born 28 years old. Before my eldest brother passed away, I wasn't much different from many other rich second-generation kids. His elder brother, I don't recall it being mentioned in the original text. Seeing Leroy's reticent expression, I didn't press further. After arriving home, he carried Matthew back to the room. I had no idea how serious the situation was at that time. I leisurely went to take a shower. It wasn't until there were only me and Leroy left in the room. Seeing that I was having trouble, he came over to help me dry my hair. Pale fingers gently weaved through the black hair. My heartbeat inexplicably quickened a little. When our eyes met, Leroy suddenly leaned down and kissed the top of my head. Naomi, let's become a real couple. Okay, what do you mean? Were we just pretending to be a couple all along? My mind, previously intoxicated by male charm, suddenly became clear. And then I learned about a plot point that wasn't mentioned in the original text. It turns out Leroy had signed an agreement with me when we got married, that $3 million living allowance came with conditions. Matthew, before he turned 16, he wouldn't have children with me. No wonder he never demanded me to fulfill marital obligations before, getting paid without having to bear children. Now my handsome, six-pack abs, I've peaked, sugar daddy even lets me sleep with him. Good heavens, can such good fortune really exist? I started dating Leroy, yes. I somewhat affectedly told him we should date first. His frequency of returning home didn't change much, but the number of phone calls increased significantly. Sometimes he'd even report what he had for lunch or who he was entertaining in the evening. And Matthew, since that day at the parent-child sports day when he called me Mom. It felt like a door to a new world had been opened. Now it's Mom this and Mom that every day. I asked him why he never called me that before. He pouted his little lips and said, you didn't let me call you that before, you didn't like it. Besides, you weren't nice to me back then, so I didn't want to call you Mom either. Am I being good to you now? Matthew remained silent. After a while, he leaned close to my ear and said, I have a secret to tell you. I love Mom the most in the whole world. I smiled. I have a secret to tell you too. No playing with the tablet, and 20 more math problems. Matthew, no, just kidding. I'm the wicked stepmother here. That day, Leroy came home early for once. He dismissed Matthew and led me to the study with a solemn expression. Looking at me, he said, let's get a divorce. What? I thought I had misheard, but Leroy looked serious. In a flash, all I could think about was not only was I about to lose my love, but also that my daunting task as the wicked stepmother would remain unfulfilled. Seeing my expression as if the sky had fallen, Leroy quickly pulled me over. Naomi, don't panic. My bad for not explaining clearly. It's a fake divorce. Then he quietly explained to me that there was a mole among the company's top executives, and he needed to pretend to conduct a property inventory to divert attention. He discussed with me about cooperating in his act. Hearing this, I breathed a sigh of relief. My leisurely days with a monthly salary of $3 million were secured. But then again, if this were some melodramatic short series about the wealthy, he'd probably have arranged for a female secretary to deliberately drive me away. Then you hurt me. And I hurt you. After 300 rounds of mutual torment, we reconciled and mended our broken relationship. When I told Leroy this, he gave me a complicated look and tapped my forehead. I laughed heartily a couple of times, then began to seriously listen to his revenge plan. We were both so focused that we didn't notice someone lying at the study door, intermittently hearing words like divorce and bankruptcy, when Leroy finally discussed it with me. As soon as I opened the door, I saw Matthew with tears welling up in his eyes. Little codfish. Before I could finish speaking, he let out a howl and threw himself at me, clinging to my leg. No need to ask, I'm with you, I'll follow you. Both Snow White and I are with you. We're your private property. Me, Leroy. It's hard to explain to a child what's going on. The day the divorce news was announced, I had originally planned to leave alone, but I couldn't resist Matthew's loud crying. Mommy, hick. Don't go, hick. I'll collect water bottles to support you. A few times when he went jogging with his coach, they encountered elderly scavengers in the park. I gave him a quick science lesson. Who would have thought he actually remembered it? In the end, there was no other way, so I had to let the driver take a detour and drop Matthew off at my current apartment. The apartment can't compare to a villa, being only about 100 square meters. I stopped hiring nannies. Every day, Matthew and I clean up together. To be honest, it's been a long time since I enjoyed the pleasure of being a wicked stepmother. In contrast, Matthew not only adapted well but also became inexplicably diligent. He said, "Mom, don't worry, when I become a genius child prodigy, I'll definitely take you back to get revenge. Damn studying, I'll study you to death." Me, I've already explained to him that it's not real. Next time I watch those dramatic short soap operas about wealthy families, I won't play them out loud again. The apartment is in the city center, much more convenient than a villa. I took a bite of the long-missed fried chicken and let out a satisfied sigh. Little Matthew poked at the nutritional meal in front of him, looking like he was about to cry from envy. Mom, what are you eating? Eating bitterness. But it smells so delicious. It smells good but tastes bitter. Children can't eat it, it would kill them. I'm a big kid. Oh, then let me test you. What's 36,781 multiplied by 5482? Matthew, no, yes, I did it on purpose. Gotta occasionally reinforce the wicked stepmother persona. But I might let him have a sip of that taro milk, hee. After some more time, I grew tired of all the takeout options around me. Leroy, the company matter was finally resolved. When he came to pick us up to go home, I was cooking and couldn't free up my hands. Sent Matthew to answer the door, unexpectedly. Upon seeing it was Leroy, he blinked his big eyes and asked, "Uncle, who are you looking for? Why did you come to my house?" Leroy, though calling him uncle wasn't exactly wrong, but, if I remember correctly, I should be your father, Mom. There's an unfamiliar uncle outside, let's chase him away, seems like he's angry at his dad. I responded but didn't go out. Matthew ran back to the living room in his slippers, making a clattering sound. Leroy came in and spent a long time reasoning with him before finally calming him down. In the end, Matthew said, "I'll forgive you, but only if Dad treats me to something to eat." "What would you like to eat?" "I want to suffer." Then Leroy went into the kitchen, rolled up his shirt sleeves, and personally made Matthew a plate of bitter melon scrambled eggs. Matthew, no, not this. As seasons came and went, in the blink of an eye, Matthew was already in high school. Over the years, I've strictly adhered to the stepmother housekeeper policy, ensuring he never lives a pampered young master's life. He even started riding a bicycle to school. That day, he texted me on phone after school, saying he wanted to bring a classmate home. I replied okay and began ordering takeout. Grilled cold noodles, fried chicken strips, rose jelly, and pizza. "Don't tell your dad," Matthew replied with a begging emoji. "I've reduced one item as I saw fit. It's not that the housekeeper can't make them. It's just that they don't taste as good as the ones from outside." When Matthew entered, I was brushing Snow White's fur. The big white cat meowed coquettishly, wanting dried fish treats. Seeing that it wouldn't work with me, immediately went to greet the just-arrived Matthew. Matthew handed the snacks to the nanny and picked up Snow White, giving her a little bounce. Then he introduced the nervous-looking boy following behind him to me. Matthew said this was his deskmate, Morgan. "Oh, Morgan," I nodded. "Wait, holy crap. Isn't that the male lead?" "My dear son, why did you bring the male lead home?" Later I learned that Morgan was a specially admitted student at their school. In his first month at school, he dethroned Matthew from the top spot in the grade rankings. From then on, the two of them became academic rivals. Today, he brought Morgan back to gather intelligence on the competition. But later at the dinner table, he learned that Morgan's grandmother was seriously ill. Morgan planned to drop out after one more semester to work. Matthew was moved with compassion again. He told me he wanted to financially support Morgan. After graduation, he can work at James' house to repay the debt. Me, the villain, recruits the male lead and makes him his own subordinate. From then on, the future formidable male lead, upon graduation, is destined to enter James's company to toil like a beast of burden. Is this right? But as I look at Matthew's hopeful eyes, I recall Morgan's embarrassed appearance, couldn't find the words to object. Forget it, I'll just focus on being the wicked stepmother. Other people's fates aren't my concern. So I said, "Fine, the sponsorship money will be deducted from your allowance." Matthew, no. Soon it arrived, Matthew's day to take the college entrance exam. As the wicked stepmother, I too faced my final trial, secretly altered Matthew's college entrance exam preferences. The system said it could turn a blind eye to all my previous cheating behaviors, except this time. If you don't act according to your character setting, you will die directly. I recalled the test results I received a couple of days ago and had no choice but to turn on the computer. Matthew's password was easy to guess. It was the birthday of Leroy and me. I asked the system if there were any indications of a profession in the original text. The system said no, but I had to change Matthew's preferences to something completely opposite. Simply put, if he applied for English, I had to change it to math. I couldn't be bothered to laugh at the system's lack of common sense. Looking at Matthew's baffling college application choices, I decisively changed them all to top-tier schools. Sigh, I've been a stepmother for so many years. I truly acted maliciously for once. Matthew knows nothing about me altering his college application choices, probably because after the college entrance exams ended, people had more free time. Not only does he check on me every day, but he also starts managing me on behalf of his dad. You can't drink watermelon juice, it's too cold. Auntie just mopped the floor. Wait a bit before going over. I've taken Snow White to my room for now. Don't keep holding him so much lately. I suspect he knows something, you unfilial son. I'm telling your dad. Matthew straightened his back. My dad told me before he went on a business trip. Also, I'm not going to school recently, so I can't bring you snacks anymore. Me, brat. Having done something bad, I felt a bit guilty, but also somewhat sad. I'm afraid this might also be the last concern from Matthew before the admission letter arrives. On the day the results were released, Leroy made a special trip back overnight. Our family anxiously waited by the computer, feeling guilty. I was especially nervous. Leroy helplessly glanced at my hand, which had turned pale from being clenched too tightly. Naomi, this isn't a prosthetic limb. I sheepishly let go. In the end, the computer didn't show Matthew's grades. His grades were announced a few days late. The teacher personally notified him. He was ahead Morgan by 2 points, becoming the top science student in the city. Meanwhile, he also found out about my decision to change my college application preferences. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. I turned away, unsure of how to explain. He ate his tears mixed with rice, and was so angry that he ignored me for several days. On the day Matthew returned to school as an outstanding graduate to give a speech, the school specially invited me. I thought about it and still decided to go. According to Matthew's personality, there's an 80% chance he would expose my true colors on stage, but if you've done something wrong, it's only right to be punished and criticized. I sat in the front row, watching the radiant young man under the spotlight, blinking my sore eyes. I waited to face the judgment of fate. Didn't expect Matthew's first words in the speech to be, "The person I'm most grateful for is my mom. It was her love that accompanied me as I grew up, and it was she who pointed me in the right direction in life. She cultivated my sense of independence from a young age, teaching me to do my own things by myself. The stories she told me were full of creativity, helping me learn to think divergently. She encouraged me to actively participate in daily household chores, fostering a sense of ownership in the family. She urged me to take care of my pets, teaching me what responsibility means. Through her actions, she showed me the spirit of surprise and never giving up. Matthew lavished me with a flood of praise. Not like a valedictorian speech, more like my own awards ceremony. As soon as the speech ended, countless parents rushed over to ask me for parenting advice, looking utterly bewildered. I was escorted out of the auditorium by the father and son pair. Only later did I learn that Matthew had never been angry with me. He had deliberately filled out the volunteer form incorrectly. He wanted to fulfill me in his own way. Unexpectedly, I somehow managed to set things right by accident. However, Matthew's reason for changing his application was truly beyond words. I straight up punished him by making him and his dad weed the garden under the midday sun. It would be best to dry out the water in your head, Leroy. Why do I have to go to punish him too? If the child is not taught, it is the father's fault. Leroy, Matthew, hee. At that moment, I suddenly heard the countdown for the system's detachment. System, thank you. Thank you for covering for me all this time. System, thank you too. What are you thanking me for? Thank you for saving the kitten. Wishing you all the best in the future. Goodbye. I was momentarily stunned, until Matthew and Leroy waved at me, wiping sweat from their brows. The sunlight outside the window was just right. I patted my increasingly round belly, a serendipitous twist of fate. It's just perfectly right. Extra chapter, Matthew. Matthew, when he was little, his nanny took him out for a walk. He noticed everyone had a mother, except him. At first, he thought the nanny was his mother. When he called her that, the nanny looked terrified and denied it, feeling wronged. He turned and told Leroy about it. Leroy remained silent for a while, then patted his little head. Then, not long after, he got himself a mother. At first, this mother treated him very well, and he was happy every day, but gradually, this mother changed. She began to deliberately starve him and dress him in tattered clothes. The kindergarten kids bullied him. He complained to her with grievances, hoping she would protect him, yet she coldly said to him, "Why don't they bully others but only you? Maybe there's something wrong with you." After it happened many times, little Matthew stopped daring to complain. His personality also became increasingly silent. Leroy was busy with work and didn't come home often, but would call to ask how he was doing. Matthew didn't dare say he wasn't doing well, because the bad mother would pinch his thighs. He would flatteringly tell Leroy, "Mr. Leroy, with me at home, you can rest assured about everything." Later Matthew learned that this mother was not his biological mother, which was why she treated him so badly. One night, Matthew leaned on the windowsill to look at the stars. Suddenly, a streak of light flashed across the sky. He had heard the nanny say that this was a shooting star, and you could make a wish. He immediately closed his eyes. Shooting star, if you can hear my wish, could you bring my mom back to me? The next day, Matthew waited eagerly, but she didn't show up. The third day, the fourth day, until Matthew himself felt despair. That day, it was already the third time he had a nosebleed in kindergarten. The teacher said he had excessive internal heat and suggested parents prepare some bitter melon juice to cool him down. Matthew pursed his lips, but didn't know who to tell. Father is thousands of miles away. The wicked mother wished him dead. He sadly shed little pearls of tears. A strange emotion inexplicably surged in his heart. He could barely restrain himself. Then the next morning, after the only milk he could drink was taken away, he finally couldn't help but glare fiercely at the bad mom. The bad mom was stunned for a moment, and then he received a cup of bitter melon juice. From then on, he noticed that the bad mother had changed. She would buy him new clothes. She would tell him strange stories. She would playfully call him little codfish, will still kiss him. This mom is so wonderful. Matthew absolutely adores her. He used to think he was the most miserable child, but now he has a mother of his own. He is the happiest child in the world. He lived this happy life for 13 years, until after entering high school, he accidentally discovered that he was not his parents' biological child. His father Leroy was actually his uncle. His parents died in an accident. Then the free-spirited uncle was forced to take on responsibilities that weren't originally his. At this very moment, he learned that his mother was pregnant. Will mom stop loving him once she has her own child? Uncle said he would inherit the family business when he comes of age, but shouldn't all this belong to mom's biological child? Would mom start to dislike him if she found out? The young boy, caught between adolescence and his own troubled thoughts, resolutely filled out his application form with reckless abandon. He wanted to return everything in his own way. Later, when his mother learned the reason, she looked at him with an expression reserved for the mentally challenged. She stared until his face turned red. His mom told him to stop wasting time on useless things. If you really want to repay her, just help take care of his little sister more. He cradled his baby sister, who was just a few months old, in his arms, watching Snowy rubbing against his feet. Then he told his sister the story of Snow White and her 7 stepbrothers.